The accumulated filth of all the sex and murder will foam up around their waists, and all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us!" And I'll whisper, "No." More on that story later. Right then, hello, good morning, good evening, and welcome to a beeping phone beeping beepily at the start of a video review. My name is Paul, I'm also called Knickknack, and last night I watched a film. You've possibly seen my daily teasers go past here on YouTube or on my blog, Knickknack's Old Peculiar, along with my reviews of various TV shows. I've been watching Star Trek Discovery's 4th season just recently, and I'm probably going to try and fit in a few other things as well. I also occasionally watch a movie every so often and then try and tell you about it. And last night, I actually caught the first one I've seen in a while. I did have a couple of options lined up. I had Last Night in Soho looking at me. I had Spider-Man No Way Home sounding like it was fun. Titane, Godzilla vs. Kong, Man Bites Dog, equally all sounded as attention-grabbing. Eventually, I actually sat down last night with the Robert Pattinson film, The Batman. I think it's worth watching, but wanted to tell you about it first. The Batman opens with an unnamed watcher watching someone with binoculars, watching a little boy playing in a lavish room in the family mansion of Don Mitchell, the mayor of Gotham City, who shoos his son out of his office while he makes an important phone call. Once that call is done, we see that the unknown watcher has noticed the easily accessible skylight window at the top of the at the top of the mansion. There's a skylight the intruder can get through. A skylight that allows the masked intruder to get in, get to the office, and kill the mayor before going to work on the mayor's body with quite a bit of duct tape. In a shift of scene, we see Bruce Wayne wandering around the city of Gotham in a very effective disguise, and we also hear him filling in his diary and narrating his entry for that day, and we find that this is a Thursday in an unnamed year. One that's presumably near the end of Halloween or end of October, as it's Halloween. We see many Gotham citizens in Halloween costumes, and we hear Bruce Wayne filling in a diary about his night's work as Batman, telling us of the 2 years he's been working as a masked vigilante. We hear this, as I've already said, we hear this voiceover as a hooded Bruce, not yet in costume, wanders around the street looking for crimes to prevent. And eventually we see that he finds, in full Batman rig, he finds a helpless commuter being attacked by a gang of youths in clown makeup. It's only after the gang are dealt with that our hero sees the sign he's arranged with Lieutenant Jim Gordon of the Gotham City Police Force lighting up the sky. The signal's there partly to scare criminals, but also to let Batman know he's needed. Something murderous is up. Now, what did I think of the Batman? Good, bad, indifferent? Smoothly beautiful art piece, or the kind of snot not even Troma would go near? I think we could say the Batman is not that bad. Really, it's not. What we've got is possibly a lot of things. The plot, hunting for a serial killer version of the Riddler that owes as much to the Zodiac Killer, go look him up, as it does to anything in the DC Comics, is well done. Although the film, I think, in the immortal words of Mark Kermode, is maybe possibly half an hour too long. It's 2 hours and 55 minutes, so God knows what the director's cut's going to be like. The Riddler's victims are all corrupt city officials. He's killing them during a mayoral election to show people that the city's current government is incredibly corrupt and needs possibly quite serious replacing. It's a well done, if a little long thriller, one that turns its DC supervillain into a realistic villain. A villain, I should add, that's well played by Paul Dano. The character's final cell scenes against Pattinson's Batman and against an unnamed prisoner played by Barry Keoghan are very well done indeed. Pattinson himself, on the other hand, I'm not too sure what to make of Robert Pattinson's performance, to be really frank. I know he built up a huge fan base in the Twilight movies, but I never saw them. They're not really particularly aimed at my generation, I think. And I can't say that I've seen anything else with him in it either, so I don't know that much about his capabilities. Yes, he does seem to know his basic job of being an actor. He learns lines, does his blue blocking. He does a very good fight scene, from what I can see as the Batman. And the opening scene of him saying, "I'm vengeance," is well done. So he does well and has a great supporting cast, and yet, because I've seen none of his other performances, as good a performance as he gives, I feel it's a little too robotic for my taste. I've got none of his other performances to compare that to. Time and possibly more films in this run of Batman movies could well improve his performance. But I still personally think Christian Bale made for a better Batman and Ben Affleck made for a better Bruce Wayne. Don't ask, but there's a whole load of arguments about how the character is supposed to be something of a split personality. Talking of the supporting cast, which we weren't and we should do, something I know that Gotham, the TV series that shows the story of a young Bruce Wayne, something I know that Gotham did was explore the Penguin, and that was, from what I could see, was something of a first. And it cast a young actor called Robert Lord Taylor as a version of the character that runs a shady nightclub. And he did a superb job. He really did. You got the feeling that the Penguin wasn't just a shady nightclub owner or a shady this, that, and the other, or a slightly shady gangster, but you really got the feeling from Taylor's playing of the part that the character was a psychopath that had got you as soon as look at you. You really got a feel for the character's dangerousness. The only other time I've seen somebody do as well as the Penguin, and it's possibly an easy part to do well, I don't know, but Colin Farrell, a totally unrecognisable Colin Farrell in a fat suit and aged makeup, gave a really convincing performance for me. It really was a watchable. You could believe the Penguin was a gangster with a limp and who knew the ins and outs of the criminal underworld. Really was a good performance, I thought. The rest of the supporting cast are equally as good. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon really was. He and Pattinson played the good cop, bad cop roles quite well. He really did do a good job of it. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, again, bloody fantastic, and seriously, she's got her mother's good looks. I know that much. Let's leave that one right there. I'll get in trouble. Andy Serkis as Alfred is as good as the rest of the supporting cast. I think he's seriously underused. The man is, after all, practically invented motion capture acting. But he is, outside of that, he is a competent, beautifully capable actor. Go watch his performance in Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll if you don't believe me. So he does well, but he's underused in this one. We'll have to see how future entries in this version of the franchise goes. There's also the shots in these early scenes as well of Pattinson's versions of Batman getting around Gotham in a motorbike, wearing a heavily darkened motorcycle helmet with a darkened visor. He sort of finishes up a fight, to give you an example. How I saw it working was he'd finish a fight, he'd chain somebody to a wall, he'd disappear off into the shadows, take off the Batman cowl, put on the motorbike helmet, ride off into the distance. So in all of those senses, with all of that said, The Batman is a good film. What else can I tell you? It is also, again, in some senses, in some ways, a bit of a hodgepodge, or more accurately, a bit of a cake. Bear with me. Any movie is, I think, a bit of a cake. It's a mixture of plot, character, stylistic influences, jam, cream, special effects, more cream, bit of caster sugar and some flour and a couple of eggs, and quite possibly a musical score, keep that in mind, that eventually is going to get turned into a Victoria Sponge, or Battenberg, or Stollenking. It's going to be a cake. And it's not necessarily going to be a cake that's going to be to everyone's taste, but nonetheless, it's going to be a cake. Whatever. There's a lot going on there, isn't there? But it's the references. I mentioned references, the showing off there, that sort of got me. I think that Matt Reeve, the director, and Peter Craig, the writer, wanted, like any of us do, wanted to show off. At least I think that's what they're doing here. As one possible example, the Batman's opening monologue takes the form of a diary entry from Bruce Wayne, stroke Batman himself. One that immediately put me in mind of the major character in Watchmen, of Rorschach, the masked figure in The Watchmen. He opens the graphic novel with the quote I gave you at the start, in part, at the start of this video. It's from his diary. He opens the first episode with a diary entry and includes that line. And that quote is the thing I immediately thought of first when I saw the opening of this film. That opening line from Batman quoting you about turning into a nocturnal animal. That's the first thing I thought of. It's something I felt Reeve and Craig would know, because it strikes me they're comic book fans. You'd have to be to a certain extent to get a Batman movie right. And it's something that I feel they would know, is that the Watchmen creator Alan Moore said he created Rorschach in part to explore how a real-world Batman would work. Rorschach is the totally psychotically obsessed vigilante side of the Batman character, with Night Owl 2 being the rich playboy that's got all the posh gear. That's possibly self-evident there. Some of the music, talking of music, seemed very reminiscent of The Godfather. There's a four-note da-da-da-da motif played whenever Carmine Falcone appears, that seemed, to me anyway, to my unmusical ears, seemed very similar to the opening notes of The Godfather Waltz, the theme tune to The Godfather. And as if to confirm that Godfather link, the Batman plays I Have But One Heart, the Johnny Fontaine song, when Bruce Wayne goes to meet Carmine Falcone. You couldn't make these things more explicit, could you? It is literally that song from The Godfather. It's very knowingly done, I think. There's other things lurking in the background as well. The Riddler, his habit of asking riddles, that comes, of course, from the character's comic book origins. But his habit of playing for a given value of playing with his victims reminded me very much of the Jigsaw Killer in Saw. The Riddler's sending video clips to all and sundry via the internet. Again, that got me thinking of Heath Ledger's cut of the Joker, although, again, that could just as easily have been lifted from Saw, although he didn't have a little Vince doll floating around on a tricycle. Another of the Riddler's victims. One of them ends up being crashed into an altar of a church in a big car with a collar that's designed to blow his head off. But one of the other victims has a cage clamped to his face with rats at the other end of the cage, and they have to climb through a maze to get to their victim. But as someone who's read the original Orwell novel 1984 several times, I immediately thought of the scene in Room 101 where Winston Smith has a cage full of rats clamped to his face. First thing I thought of was 1984. I still have a mental image of John Hurt with that cage on his face. There's still other things doing the rounds. There's one scene of the Batman jumping from a high landing with his cape spread out. That got me thinking. It's a straight lift, I think, from the Tim Burton 1989 Batman movie. There's another scene where the Batman uses a grapnel and a harpoon gun to fly up a stairwell. That reminded me of a similar scene in the 89 film, although obviously minus Kim Basinger. There's other minor things. The opening scene include Batman's confrontation with a gang of Joker lookalikes. One, there's a new member, we assume, getting initiated, had only half of his face painted. Go watch Prince's video for his song Party Man. Have a look at his makeup in that. He's got one side painted as the Joker, the other side is au naturel. In another later scene, we see Alfred reminiscing about his time in the circus. Now, from what Wikipedia tells us about the film, the circus version of the character is supposed to be ex-military, ex-army. Although, for me, the first thing I thought of when I heard Circus's version of Alfred using the circus as a phrase while he's trying to decipher something, that immediately got me thinking of Le Carre's Smiley novels. It's Le Carre's term for MI6's headquarters, the circus. Which makes sense when you remember that Smiley is a member or ex-member occasionally of MI6. It does stand for military intelligence, after all. Now, with all of that said, or possibly waffled, you're going to be asking a few things. Please keep in mind, I've got a 4-star system of rating movies. 0 is the worst thing you're going to see. 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the best movies I've seen. So keep that in mind. And with all of that said, you're going to be asking, Paul, what did you make of the Batman? Good, bad, indifferent. 0 stars, 4 stars. Paul, you're going to be saying, shut up with the waffling. Tell us how the film was. I will be honest, I'm having mixed results on it. Yes, The Batman is a good film. It's well made, well written. It's a good thriller. It's nicely done. And with the possible exception of Pattinson's performance, and even that's not necessarily bad, it's just somewhat wooden, it's well acted. It's watchably entertaining. I just don't necessarily think, as good as it is, that The Batman is possibly the best film in the deck. Personally, I still think that's 2008's The Dark Knight. At any rate, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Please feel free to hit the eye in the corner there that's got more of my goodies going on in it. And please remember, I've given The Batman just 2 stars out of a potential 4. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening. Good night. Take care.